Welcome, everyone. This is the DFS Bum. All right, we have coming up here Saturday night, one game showdown slate for NBA playoffs. Lakers and the Rockets continue that series. Before we get into it, a couple good things to report real quick. A shout out to Basketballs 420, a listener of ours, won last night. $8,000 ended up being, I think it was, I can't remember, on the Showdown slate Thursday night. So congrats there. I don't remember all the details on the lineup other than I know he had mentioned he had Austin Rivers in there, which was kind of a little bit more of a contrarian play. Not that many people had them in the lineups. I didn't have him in my player pool, unfortunately. So anyway, shout out to Basketballs 420. I'm sure you hopefully smoked a nice victory blunt. And I had the night before a nice little victory myself in the Showdown slate when it was on the two games on Wednesday night. I think there was a 16-way tie, but it was a 10 grand takedown for me. And so here's my lineup here at Beverly and Lowry, Powell, Smart, Anobi, Leonard, Tice, and then Tatum and Zubac. And I tell you, I am shocked that I was able to win with Beverly doing as poor as he did, but it was a pretty crazy slate, and I think, and a lot of times there's been some huge ties, but I think probably Powell was a guy, and when they went into overtime, that's what saved me. Tice and Powell did really well in that overtime in that game. Otherwise, I would have not even been anywhere as close. But nonetheless, nice to take that down. So. I felt that I was due for some wins. There's some other folks who were due for some wins too. So anyhow, keep it rolling, everyone. All right, guys, let's get into the players here. And then, if you have not yet subscribed, please do so. We're running the stats all the way through the playoffs, all to the finals. Also do football over here. I've not yet got to a main slate one. I just might not do it this weekend. I didn't get a chance to record the last day. Was it? I think I just missed one day. I was just doing some last minute drafts, some best ball drafts and everything. And it's just been crazy the last couple 24 hours or so. But anyhow, please subscribe and join us. It's going to be a fun fall with all the football and basketball going on. All right. So here with the players, what I'll do is I'm going to run down. We'll just kind of look at their performance as far as their stats real quick. And then I got another spreadsheet. And then we can just start looking at some lineup construction, see how some of the salaries might fit. So tonight or tomorrow, we've got, of course, LeBron James and Anthony Davis have been the two top guys playing unbelievable here. Oh, I forgot to change my games played. So the number of games are 4 here. So these are a little bit inflated stats, but overall for the playoffs, this is probably a little bit more accurate. They've both been averaging a little bit over 60 points. We got James Harden for playoffs averaging right around 50 points himself, just coming off a 50-point game. Last game, Davis was at 52 points. James was at 52.5. We have Westbrook averaging about 42 points for the playoffs. He's been playing pretty decent this series. He's coming off a 42-point game. 2 games ago was a 54-point game. We have Rondo. The Rondo train continues, just playing unbelievable. Since he's come back, has been averaging, probably, what is it? I would say probably about 35 points or so. Covington, a little bit disappointing performance. Last game out, only had 13 points, but prior to that, 30 points, 25 and 32. First round, he had averaged 33 points, so he's come back down to earth a little bit from there. Jeff Green, I don't know if you guys heard the news. Probably most of you have. Daniel House is out. I think he had some coronavirus protocol violations or something, so they booted him. He probably went off campus, I'd imagine, or outside the bubble. So he is gone. Green only went out there, and I was kind of surprised with Covington too, only playing 23 minutes and 13 points. Same thing with Green. And honestly, too, PJ Tucker had a really bad game, only 6 points after he had an amazing stretch. Well, actually, I guess the last couple games they were pretty crappy, but before that, he'd been playing unbelievable. So it was kind of unique that with them being with relatively short rotation to begin with, and with him being out, that some of those guys didn't go off. So I'm looking for a lot of those guys to have some bounce back games. Covington, he's definitely capable of giving you 30-some points. Gordon is another guy. Last two games, a little bit underwhelming. 25 points in 17, but before that, 28, 31. Going back last series, 28, 27, 34, 33, 31, 32, 29. Kuzma's fallen off the planet here. I guess he did have 23 points the other night, and that actually was in the winning lineup on the main slate that night. Again, that was a 2-game slate, not a 1-game slate. But I thought he might really do well this series, particularly with them basically dropping. Howard hasn't played the last 3 games, and McGee is basically out of the rotation now because of the match the small ball. Horton Tucker did come in. He would be, he only played 7 minutes. He did give you about 13 points. Not sure how relevant he will be. And then Ben McLemore looked like he was picking up some house minutes. He came in and played 14 minutes and gave you about 12 points. But outside of that, Rivers been up and down. That was the thing about, hey, with shout out back to basketballs there. Yeah, man. Rivers came off 27 points, 27 minutes before that. 10 minutes, 0 points, 6 minutes, -2 points. So, yeah. Now that is one thing because it is a main slate. Like if there were a blowout, I think McGee is banged up a little bit, so I'm not sure about him even playing at all, period. If there was a blowout, I wonder if, let's assume that McGee does play, if him or Howard would maybe get into that game. Because either one of those guys, if they could ever come into that game and play 20 minutes, I think they'd both slate up. And they're going to be low owned. So that would be one strategy potentially. But performance-wise, yeah. Caruso, been playing solid ball for the most part. I guess he's a little bit up and down, but he did come out the other night, gave you 30 points, 29 minutes. Danny Green, 25 points. So he came out and played relatively well. Actually, yeah, I remember that lineup last night now. It had Caruso and Rivers were in the utility spots because it was in a Fanduel. I remember that. And then Westbrook was in the utility spot, and then it was Westbrook was in the third spot, the pro spot. Harden was in the all-star spot, and then the top spot was Davis. I don't think LeBron's salary fit in there. So it was which is kind of unique that the top scorer, if I remember correctly, wasn't even in the winning lineup, but their salary was so close that it didn't really matter, but usually that's kind of a unique situation. So anyhow, this is just overall just kind of like how the performance of these guys have been. Bottom line, Houston has just got a small rotation, and really to some degree too the Lakers. So we're just trying to squeeze these guys into there and really collectively trying to get as many minutes as we can. Now, if you were to sit there and try to take on FanDuel the top lineups, the top 3 guys, I should say, not lineups. Let's just see what that does. So that's 46,500 salary. And let's just say if we put in, like, say, Horton Tucker, which will be interesting. Like, he was probably, like, the last game would have been the game to own him. Where he was probably, I don't even know if he was really owned. I'm sure a couple people maybe had him. Because it was just, but he was nowhere near close to the winning lineup. So if you were to do that and you want to put James, Davis, and Harden and rotate those guys out at the top spot, you could do that, and then that would leave you 7,000 left over in salary, and then there would be McLemore, Markieff Morris, McGee, or KCP. So the reality is like, we were saying McGee's probably not going to even play, but KCP is going to be out there. Overall for the playoffs, he has been averaging almost 30 minutes. So, yeah, or maybe 28 or so. Like I say, I was off. I didn't update the games. Played in one of those things, but that would be now. Here's the thing though, too, is Horton Tucker could very well not even come out and play, or if he does, just give you 0 points performance. So chances are that, and honestly, to some degree, I especially because he went out and he did okay. I it might be somewhat of a common lineup, and and I guess I didn't really look on FanDuel. I don't think there's really anybody else there that's going to be at that price that would even be relevant. A lot of times there might be a guy that might be like say 6,000 or something that you might be able to squeeze in there. So chances are that sort of lineup isn't going to work. But if we end up taking out, and like the other night where you had say like Westbrook in there, and if he goes to 13,000, and then even if you still had James and Davis with the top 2 salaries, and then let's just say we're like, yeah, Horton, Tucker, that's just too much of a risky play, and we go up to the guys at 7,000, then you could partner some of those guys up. Now that gives us 8,500 in cap room. So now we can get into a guy like Green, Caruso, like I mentioned, Howard, probably not a guy that you would be interested in. But with that sort of lineup, you can see between having like a Marquise Morris, maybe a Ben McLemore, that might be like a guy. He probably is not going to be highly owned, because if you look at it, I mean, out of 4 guys of 7,000, and chances are like you're probably not going to play those groupings of guys together, just because you're going to have you could, if you want to be contrarian, by all means, but normally, I mean, you're going to be able to buy up, but having some of those guys in there between like Morris, McGee, KCP, and even like Rivers, I guess to some degree might fit into that grouping as well. McLemore would probably be, well, actually McGee would be the first guy to go, I would say, because he's probably not going to even play. He's up, but that's the guy that also has the most upside if he were to play. So that would be the thing, I guess. It depends. Like if it's cash lineup, you're not doing that many lineups. Like a lot of these guys, I wouldn't even fart around with them. If you're more of a GPP where you might be doing a ton of lineups, like myself, I'm probably gonna throw some McGee in there, just knowing that like, yeah, like I'm perfectly cool like with that lineup not doing shit, if that's the case. So those are some things you could end up doing there. I think probably what you'll end up finding when it's all said and done with is that I wouldn't be surprised if you've got James or Davis in the top spot, and then maybe like Harden coming in, just with him being a little bit cheaper, that even gives you a little bit more salary relief. So if he was in there, that 15,000, now you can almost start to buy up where, let's say probably Caruso is going to give you at least 20, 24 minutes. So I guess if you had that 8,500, you would be partnered back up with Rivers again. And I fully expect Rivers to come out and like shit the bed. Like people probably buy him. Recency bias, like shit, like Rivers just beat me. And then like watch him come out and then he'll do like horrible again. That just kind of seems to be the MO with some of those guys. So I don't think I'm going to play him again. And like I said, that's an easy trap to get into. But all that being said, is what is different from those last games compared to now is that whole Daniel House factor. House is no longer involved, and then Rivers is definitely going to play more. So if you had more salary all day long, I would take like Rivers over McLemore for sure, and Rivers over McGee for sure. I just wouldn't probably take Rivers normally over KCP or Markieff Morris. I think the other two guys, Morris is just got more upside, just he's a big man, he's got more chance to get some rebounds and block shots. And then KCP is just playing more minutes, unless there's like a blowout or foul trouble, something like that. Now, really where you're probably going to see is really, I think, like the key, though, to winning these tournaments usually is nailing down this pro spot on FanDuel. And I'll get to DraftKings here in a second. And that's where you're going to probably see where you do buy up. And then that's what I have done And there's been a lot of big ties because some of these lineups have been so common, but I've really been having these three spots for the most part just dominated by James, Davis, and Harden. On occasion, I have had Westbrook up there in some of those lineups. And then coming in there before, it used to be the third spot would be, you could have like Westbrook would be in there, of course. Covington was in there. Initially, I used to have Kuzma in there, but he's gone. And then Rondo's a guy now that has been playing unbelievable. He's basically the third cog in that Lakers wheel now. And with him being, when LeBron's out, like he's a guy that can still break down a defense off the dribble. So anyhow, that's a guy that can go in there. Gordon is another guy that goes in there. Tucker, I don't know at this point anymore. Probably not. But for example, if you have, say, James and Davis, and let's say Rondo in there. And now here's the thing, with all three of those guys be in the top three scorers in this sort of game? Maybe not. But anyway, just for illustration purposes, if we have Rondo's salary in there, $11,500, all of a sudden now we can start to buy up, and now you've got some other options where you can like fit Tucker into a lineup or Danny Green, Jeff Green. There's all these other guys in here potentially, depending on how you have them. So I think it, like I say, it really comes down to this pro spot and who is kind of that second rung of players that's going to go in there and then allow you to buy up, so you can actually buy up into the second rung of players into those utility spots. Okay, so now let's go over to DraftKings here, a little bit different. And my last kind of thought on FanDuel is really, at the end of the day, you're just looking raw points and how you can get those within the total salary that you have. Whereas like in a main slate, we're so often talking about trying to hit like your value, like your 6 times value, or a minimum of 5, that sort of thing. And that doesn't really exist in here because there's nothing really with the salary. It's just, can it fit in the salary cap, and then they're going to multiply the points out. Now, when we go over to DraftKings, we're really back into the value on the salary is so huge, because they're going to take your salary. Most of you guys know this, obviously, if you play it. If you're new to it, what they're going to do is they're going to take your salary and times that by 1.5 and the points for that player as well. So when you start to mess around with that, looking at the DraftKings salaries here, in the salary cap is $50,000, a little bit different. I think those are actually the exact same salaries as if it was a main slate, where FanDuel's got 2 different types of salaries they use for a single slate versus main slate. So anyhow, if you just were trying to go with, say, LeBron James in there, which would be awesome, but if you end up doing that right there puts me like $3,200 over the salary cap. And then I rounded it out with that kind of like that second tier of players, like with Rondo, Jeff Green, Tucker, Davis, Gordon. Whereas the guy that I had in there with, like, say, Westbrook, with him only being $10,000, you still got $400 to play with. Now, here's the thing that will probably, I wouldn't be surprised, is, let's just say, out of this, and that's the thing too, is like you could still leave in some really good players. But let's say here, out of these guys, I don't know, I guess Tucker's been a little bit underwhelming. Let's just say that we had him out of there and you put in, I don't know, Marquise Morris or something. So that's $3,400 there. So now you've got $3,000, okay. And then now, can that allow you to buy up quite a bit? It doesn't really get you up into the elite guys in there, but like, as you can see, I actually think DraftKings game is a lot more complicated game, in my opinion. I don't really play it, honestly, all that much, just for tax reasons, because like if I'm going to take a loss on it, I can't like offset it with like FanDuel winnings. So I just basically try to do most of my things with FanDuel, though occasionally I will play here. But again, I really think at the end of the day is, if you build yourself like a simple little spreadsheet like this, or even if you just, if you're not really like into, spreadsheets, or you're just more like like to have pen and paper and a calculator or something, and just to kind of take some rough notes and just start to kind of play around with like these salaries and like, all right, and having something where you can look at it like objectively and kind of see, and I guess when I say objectively, more just really just seeing like, all right, like how can I get these salaries in here and how much money do I have left over, and this nice pool of player, get you maybe like this just happen to be their averages or point projections or whatever. You can make your own up right there. You could even have it add them all together. The points that you have, your projections, kind of play out different scenarios, game scripts, some things. So I would really highly recommend that. And then that way too, it just might open your eyes to some certain combinations of players where you might just otherwise like overlooked. But going back here, I guess my final thoughts are with the Fanduel is building those lineups. So in here, like going back DraftKings, it's like who's going to be the best value, stick it in an MVP spot, and then just buy as many studs as you can. Relatively straightforward, I guess, even though it's complicated because the trick is like who's going to hit value. Where here is like who's going to be the highest score. So for me, I basically, and I'm like I say, like I might keep Harden in there because that will make me a little bit more unique with the MVP spots, but otherwise, if I didn't really care about that, I would probably just take James and Davis for the top spot. And then as I go down, I build my player pool, and I still keep James and Davis. Now I include Harden and Westbrook. And then I keep those guys that down, whoever might fit into there, into the pros. And then I expend the pro spot basically to probably, I would definitely do Rondo, and then either Covington or Gordon or both of them. You know, basically it's like, not rocket science, like who is the top scorer for each team, or maybe if there's two studs like Davis and Harden in this case, or I mean James and Davis on the same team, but usually it's like who are the top guys for each team. All right, they're in the MVP. All right, who are the top two for each team? So now we've got four under the star. Who are the top three? Boom. And then from there, let's just try to take in as much utility guys that we can get the bang for the buck in those last two spots. So it's kind of crazy. It's such a simple and straightforward process, but despite that, in their one game, there still are literally like tens of thousands of player combinations. But those are just a couple things to kind of get your head wrapped around all that stuff. They're fun tournaments to play because a lot of times in main slate, you might never ever see yourself in first place. And here you see yourself in first in and out all the time and seeing yourself winning some big money. So it's just, I think for me personally, it just makes the games more exciting to see yourself actually winning, like I say, where sometimes you just don't really have that in a main slate because there's so many games going on and there's just so many player combinations and whatnot. So anyhow, all right, guys, well, I hope you kick ass, and I'll see you tomorrow. And I'll definitely start. I will give you, like I mentioned, I don't know if I'm just going to even mess around with the Sunday main slate. I'm such a data-driven person, and like just the fact that I don't really have data other than last year, and I think this year is just so different. Just because of obviously with like the way that their training camp is going. So I might even just not mess around with the first main slate, but I will do a Sunday night preview, pretty good money on the line, and then I'll do the Monday night game too, because those are, again, the single game slate, same thing like football. They're just a blast. I didn't really have any luck on Thursday night. Unfortunately, I did not have Watkins in a lot of lineups. I've got him in a lot of best ball leagues I'm in, which was awesome, and I kind of knew that, so I'm like, you know what, fuck it. I don't really worry about him, and if he goes off, it's going to help me in some other areas. So anyhow, and that's just something, I guess one other thought is you can maybe like kind of hedge your bets a little bit that way too. If for you guys that are in a fantasy league versus DFS, maybe like the guy in your fantasy team, you don't play him in your DFS, and if he goes off, then like, hey, at least you got to win in your fantasy league. Though chances are there's probably not much money on the line with that. But all right, guys, anyhow, like I say, peace out, and I'll see you tomorrow. Bye.